Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's eDynamic webinar on analytics and engagement in law firms. I'm your moderator, Megan Lockwood. I'm the head of content at eDynamic, and I'm really thrilled to be joined today by two of my colleagues, Daniel Huss, who is our Director of Digital Strategy, and Aditya Khanna, who is a lead analytics and SEO consultant. Daniel has over 11 years of experience solving business problems through digital. He is Google Analytics and Omniture certified, and we actually cherry-picked him from the entrepreneurial world after he successfully sold one of his own agencies. So Daniel has spent a lot of time looking at what we're talking about today. On my team, Aditya is a digital marketing expert with more than 6 years of experience in search marketing and analytics. Driving best practices, Aditya has implemented SEO, SEM, and SMO strategies, and he'll tell you about those in a little bit, for some key customers across the globe. In today's presentation, we're going to cover how analytics and engagement are changing law firm marketing, and plus walk you through specific step-by-step processes for setting up goal setting and analytics measurement in your own firm. We'll also have question and answer session at the end, so please send us your questions via chat in the webinar, the GoToWebinar box, and we can make sure to answer them immediately in real time. That's one of those things I love about webinars, is really doing the back and forth. So now I think I should do a drum roll, please. Our analytics team, Daniel and Aditya.
Hey, thanks, Megan. Hello, everyone. This is Aditya. So I'm really excited about today's webinar on analytics and engagement in law firms. And so let's not waste any time and get things started. So first of all, we need to understand how people actually search lawyers. So since we are talking about analytics and law firms, we should know how people search for lawyers. So there was an interesting research by Lawonomics which says that 32% search on internet. So if they're searching on internet, they'll definitely be coming to your website. And about 55%, which includes people who ask their current lawyers or their friends. So basically, I would call them as referrals. Even though they are referrals, I would say they'll try to see your website and profile first, and then contact you. So so let's say not 100%. So at least 70 to 80% of the people, they'll check out your website, check out your profile, and then get in touch with you. So almost 75% of the users will use our website as a first touch point. So, and 75%, that's a big number. So that makes analytics more and more important for law firms.
Yeah, and just to add, and sorry to interrupt there, Aditya, but yeah, that as a first touch, when they're coming to the website, it's important to note that websites nowadays, we like to use the term out many doors. And what we mean by that is your website, the homepage isn't necessarily where people come into the website anymore. And because their first touch is with your website, the overall website experience needs to be extremely important, not from just the homepage, but deeper into the website itself. There's a good chance that one of your potential customers or existing customers is coming into the website via an article that they read. And their first experience with you is that page where that article is being housed. And given that such a large percentage of folks have that kind of first touch via your website, and given the fact that the website has so many different pages that need to be looked at in terms of, is this providing a good user experience, I think we just mentioned that there's a huge push that makes analytics extremely important for law firms at this point.
Absolutely, absolutely. And with analytics, you can actually track which channel people are coming from. Are they using branded keywords? Are they using PPC traffic, or the earned marketing, what we call as content marketing channel? And what pages do they like? What pages do they hate? So that's how we can change our strategy.
Very important.
Yep. Another thing, I would say is analytics is transforming. It has changed very much in the last 5 to 7 years. And this is because, nowadays we don't have any shortage of data. we can actually collect data from any digital medium. Be it a site, be it a kiosk, be it a mobile apps. We can also track offline campaigns. We have a different technique for that, but we can also track offline as well as online campaigns. And overall, analytics can actually improve the website experience by letting you know which page is performing better, which page is performing bad. And we have some CMS like Sitecore which are powered with DMS, so that you can actually change your page elements as per user's journey. And that's really powerful. So overall, I would say it improves business decisions and marketing.
Yeah, and what's really interesting about that is there's obviously a large trend that's taking place right now where the buzzword big data is being thrown around relentlessly in some cases. And I think the point of this slide to take away is that, but we're all still struggling with small data. We don't have a shortage of data. We have a shortage of insights that are being able to be taken from that actual data. And once we can develop the systems in place to understand the ways that we use those data, you're right, we'll have a chance of improving our business decision making and marketing process overall and make it actually actionable.
I agree, Dan. So there is another thing which is in the air, which is called engagement, and different people have different definitions of engagement. Some people call that it's a buzzword, but I would say that it's very confusing to understand what exactly engagement is. So in simple words, I would say it's an interaction. It's an interaction what user make on your website against a clearly defined goal, and that goal has to be measurable. So a goal engagement can be a session time. A person has spent X amount of minutes on your website, visited n number of pages in a session, watched a video or download an ebook. So we'll talk about this more. What do you think about this, Dan?
Yeah, you mentioned that it's kind of a buzzword, and I have issues with the word engagement just overall, as I've mentioned in previous webinars that we've done, and I'm very vocal about it on Twitter. And I think it's because, to quote Kaushik, it's not useful. We need to talk about engagement in terms of the actual interactions. Engagement is kind of one of those terms that we use when we don't really understand what we want to measure. So by perpetuating the use of it, it kind of allows us to not really try and make a deeper understanding of what it really means in terms of what our users are doing. So if we're talking about something like time on site, let's call it what it is. Let's call it time on site.
Oh, I agree with that. So all unorganized data is crap. Be it unorganized or all aggregate data is crap. That's a statement by Avinash Kaushik, who's a known analytics ninja. So that means whenever you log into your dashboard, you might be having a different set of analytics tools. So you log into your dashboard, you see 30,000 people visiting in last 30 days. You say, wow, oh man, I think we are doing something. But but you really don't know where these visitors are coming from. Maybe 20% are coming from your own office, and your target country is USA, but 30% of your traffic is in India, which has no value.
So it really begs the question, since we are working towards understanding engagement, to use that word, and really what comprises it when we're talking about it. We're talking about, of course, as you saw in the previous slides, measurable outcomes. And if we're making the statement that aggregate data and unorganized data is not useful, it really begs the question about what we really need to know. And how do we make a decision about what those measurable pieces of data actually are? Do you have anything to add?
Oh, I agree with that. I agree. I completely agree with that. So you need to know what exactly you need to measure and what exactly you need to see.
And to really answer this question, and I think we'll get into this in much more detail, but it really starts at understanding what you want the website to do. Make sure that you're asking yourselves as a marketing team, as a information systems team, what you want that website to do. And since we're, talking about measurable outcomes and we're talking about aggregated data is bad, what we really want to know is at a segmented level. It's at a much more reduced scope than the types of aggregate data that you're going to pull straight from a Google Analytics dashboard. You need to start understanding, one, which business divisions and operations really care about the website, and understanding what it is that they want to know when they're looking at information. And then from a business standpoint, they might want to know, if we're talking about the BD team, they might want to know, of course, about how many leads are being generated for the website. And more importantly, for law firms, the practice areas might want to know exactly what types of content are driving inquiries into specific attorneys. What, if they're getting to an article, is that resulting in someone clicking through and viewing an attorney profile? That type of information is extremely important, but again, in aggregate as a practice area, it's not necessarily as valuable as it would be if you segmented and gave the practice area just the data that they needed to know.
Absolutely right. Absolutely, I agree. So, if you're a marketer, you need to have your dashboard and reporting structure so that you can see these three columns, acquisition, behavior, and outcome, because these are things which matter. You need to know, how do you want your users to come on your website? You want to come them through the paid media or the organic media or through content marketing. You need, and based on your spending of your marketing budget, you need to decide that. Behavior. So behavior is what is actually user doing on your website, what type of content they are consuming, how many pages do they consume in a session, what is the frequency, as in how many times are they visiting in the a particular time frame, what is the recency, and outcomes. That's the thing we work for, and so outcomes has micro conversions as well as macro conversions. Micro conversions are not actually conversions, but some actions which are taken by users which can lead to conversions. So you can put these users in your nurturing program or anything else you want to make so that they convert. And macro conversions are actually business leads.
I think the other thing too, when thinking about micro conversions, that's kind of important, is that a micro conversion could be a goal that you set from this behavior category. So a micro conversion could be, if we're looking at the behavior category in the center there, the first question is, what content are they consuming? A micro conversion could be that we want them to consume a certain amount of content. If they've looked at these 3 pages, we've hit one of our goal metrics. And really, when again, coming back to when we're defining engagement and that it's very outcome-based and measurable impacts, we need to set a little bit of ground rules, and I think micro conversions are one of the places to start. So let's set a goal that if someone comes to a practice area via an article and then explores that practice area more, they've now visited 2 pages on the website, then click through an attorney, that is considered we've hit a goal. We've now hit 3 pages of content within a certain type of content that we want our visitors to see, and that's a micro conversion. And ultimately, we're able to know, based off of that goal structure and them achieving that micro conversion, what percentage of them then become a macro conversion, where they've actually made a concerted effort to reach out to the firm directly. So I think that's exactly how you want to use those micro conversions, and I think you can do the same thing with things like frequency and recency. How often are they coming back to the site? Well, if we're trying to create very engaging content where are very loyal to our content, and we're trying to make a decision about whether or not it's valuable.
Which of course we're doing.
Which of course we're doing, because we're spending countless man hours and tons of money on content.
Exactly.
But we want to make sure it's valuable, right?
Yeah.
So frequency is a good measure of that, how often they're coming back to the site. So using behavior as an outcome, you could set a frequency micro-conversion or goal, where if they're visiting the content that we're creating in a specific section of the website that we care about, more than 5 times a month, 6 times a month, we would consider that goal has been hit, and we've had a micro-conversion. We've had a micro instance of where one of the outcomes that we're trying to measure against has taken place.
I agree. Dan, what you are talking about is actually setting a threshold for everything, right? So, for number of pages consumed, take an average of what sort of, how many pages do a converted client has consumed. So you can make that as your goal and count that as your micro conversions. Similarly for other metrics.
That's exactly right. Yeah, pull up the averages of the numbers of pieces of content that people are consuming, and within a given section of the site, if someone's hitting that average or higher, they've then triggered a micro conversion. You're absolutely right.
Absolutely right. Yeah. So engagement, engagement, micro conversion, and macro conversions. I believe that these things are highly correlated. So more your visitor is engaged with your content, with your website, with your pages, more is a possibility to convert, and because that means he's showing more and more interest in your company, and it has higher possibility to convert. What do you say about that, Dan?
Yeah, I mean, why do we care about these things? Why do we care about micro conversions versus the macro conversions? I'm hearing what you're saying, that there is a very high degree of correlation between these two. That if someone is hitting the types of goals that we're setting for content creation, for frequency of visiting the website, they're more likely to be engaged, and then they're more likely to, one, potentially be a customer, if that is something that we consider a macro conversion. Or I know law firms care a lot about making sure that they're having a positive user experience and kind of thought leadership and brand evangelism. If the users, a macro conversion could be that they're sharing this content. Because I'm sure all of you have gone to numerous websites and read content, and all of these websites want you to share it, right? It's a big thing. We want you to take that and post it all over Twitter, post it all over Facebook. So that's a goal that they want. But we all know that we don't do that for every article that we read. So, right. But the likelihood of us doing something like that, as if we view that as macro conversion, certainly will increase based off of the increase in the micro conversions. And when we're talking about optimization, we really want to start looking at those micro conversions as key points that we're trying to create content for. Did this piece of content, this month, what types of things did we create? Did we have an increase in micro conversions? Because they might not always directly translate perfectly into macro conversions, but chances are that they're highly correlated and will ultimately end up going that direction.
And I like the way that you guys wrote that it was co-related, because I do think that ultimately when you're doing content, what we're talking about is building a relationship with your audience online. And that's what engagement is how deeply, are you relating to your audience. So I think that's a great way to say it, is all of these different processes, how do they relate to one another, and then from there, how are they correlated? I think that's a great way to say it.
I agree with that. So now the question comes, what actually is the data we should collect? Every business is different. They have different marketing channels for business development. Every business is different. Even every law firm is different, I would say, because they might work in different practice areas or different regions. So there is no standard metric which can be used for every business. You have to actually create your own measurement plan, and which is unique for every business. So what applies for one firm may not apply for another law firm. So you need to actually start with your objective, and you need to understand what is the reason for which where your website exists. Why do you want to run a digital campaign? So these are the things you need to start with. And
I think we touched on this a little bit earlier too, and when it's a heavy question, right? It's a heady question even. Why does and we're not trying to have an existential moment here with you, but really when you created your website, if you've redesigned it or if you're examining it now, really think hard about why it exists. And I think the answer for most of you is going to be engagement, and then we then have to go through the funnel of, well, okay, again, what does that really mean? So you need to start saying, well, one, do we want our users to experience on our website? And when we say that, we say, what should they think? What should they see? What should they feel? Should they feel happy? Should they feel that you're a trustworthy organization? And what should they ultimately do? What do we think that is important to them that they need to do or want to do to interact with you? And from a business standpoint, what is important for our organization for them to do on our website? So when we ask why your website exists, you're going to get several answers, and I think you need to start defining those before you can even begin looking at the types of metrics that we're talking about now. And I think it's the exact same on a smaller scale. The same exact process goes into place of why we want to run a campaign. Why are we launching this email campaign? What is the outcome that we're trying to get from it? Perhaps it's if you're doing content marketing, you're sharing the latest thought leadership campaigns that your firm has created. Maybe it's one of those micro conversions. Maybe it's that based off of our campaign that we are running now, let's say email campaign, for example, we want folks to come in and experience 3 levels of articles based on this campaign. And when they achieve that, we will consider that metric achieved. We'll consider that a micro conversion. So answering these questions is the first step. It's starting with this as an objective before really creating this type of, before you can actually even create that measurement plan.
And I think, it needs to be start from top of the organization. You need to speak to VP of marketing or head of marketing and, get along with the analytics guy to understand the objective. That's very important. So, as a hypothetical example, I have created 3 objectives. So let's say we have a law firm and we have decided 3 objectives. One is branding. I want to do branding. Second is I want to generate leads. And the third objective is I want to improve website experience. So, let's see, after we define an objective, we need to, define goals for each objective. So there has to be a goal defined to each objective. So for branding, how are we getting to, how are we getting traffic? We're using paid media to create brand awareness. So how do we create brand awareness? We'll be using paid media. How do we generate leads? We'll be using thought leadership resources. How do we improve user experience? We'll be using videos on our website. We'll be using latest legal news on our website, maybe a different section altogether, maybe a widget on the home page. So that's how I have defined these goals. You have some take on this?
Backing into goals. Yeah, and backing into goals is that's a tough thing to do. I mean, a lot of folks would talk about using industry benchmarks to try and pull these types of information. But I don't know if that's necessarily the right way, and I think we're going to get into this in a little bit more detail, but I feel like it's important to at least mention it here. But industry benchmarks aren't necessarily the right way because there's going to be a wide varying degree in size between law firms. There's going to be a wide varying degree of the types of activities that they're doing. So when we're talking about something like creating awareness, where awareness can be measured in overall clickstream type traffic to the website that's being generated by the paid media. It can be generated by impressions. So the things that you want to, the ways that you want to create these goals are to back into them. Again, we talked about by creating averages, by looking at your firm's existing history of data and then setting a benchmark based off of that and continually optimizing that. So rather than industry benchmarks, you're using your own firm's data. So if you've generated X amount of traffic to a certain section, to your practice area section, let's use that benchmark over the course of a year and start boosting that up.
Absolutely right. So, after you define your goals, you need to define your KPIs, and let's say, I have used a hypothetical figure that I want 2,000 visitors per month on my website, and that I'm going to get through branded traffic, because I want branding to be, I have taken branded as an objective. And for lead generation, my KPI would be downloads, form fill-ups, webinar registrations, new customers. And we need to set targets also. So 100 downloads, 50 form fill-ups, 50 webinars, and 5 customers. To improve user experience, I would say 20% of the traffic what came to my website on my pages has watched a video. 30% of them have read our news section.
Yeah, and we've, again, I think this is a perfect example of how we would back into actual metrics. And sometimes seeing these metrics, you say, well, how did you come up with these? And again, it's based off of your firm's history and your organizational goals. So when we're talking about, again, using branding as an example, assuming that we're considering the amount of traffic that we're receiving per month to our website as an indication of awareness and overall brand awareness, if that goes up, that's fair to say of unique visitors, for example, that's fair to say that brand awareness of our firm is going up. So how do we arrive at that 2,000? Well, we look at perhaps we're averaging about 1,700 visits per month currently. So we know that we've got a gap of 300 visits per month. How do we generate that on average? Well, let's now take a look at how do we increase that gap. Let's take a look at that 300, break it out into different segments. One, does that mean we need to increase our media spend? Do we need to be taking more time on social media? And then perhaps do we need to get more PR out there? And break up that section and set individual goals within that 300 gap that ultimately might help to close it.
Right. So segments, segments are nothing but, I've called segments as metrics and dimensions which we use to track these. I've called them as segments. So to track my branded keywords traffic, I would like to know where they came from and, how engaged those visits were. For download, form fill-ups, webinars, new customers, I would like to know, where the traffic sources, the practice area, for which practice area the downloads happen, which practice area had maximum webinar registrations. I know I've got 5 new customers, so that's for which practice area. And I would like to know from which country, if we are operating, in various countries, I would like to know the country data also and the converted visits also. For improving website experience, traffic sources, engaged visits, practice area, frequency and recency, and country. These all are important for me.
Yeah, and I think you can start to see the kind of shape based off of this table that the funnel is creating, right? So we've set our goals. We're going to use paid media to create additional brand awareness. We've understood that 2,000 per month visits in terms of traffic, and this could be unique visits since we're trying to create brand awareness, is our KPI. And we understand that we're currently at something like 1,700 in the example that I just gave you. We now are segmenting that 1,700 traffic source into 1,700 unique visits into the various traffic sources. So, for example, if we see a spike in referral traffic and an upward swing in referral traffic, and while something like social traffic is remaining steady, does that mean that there's opportunities, one, to engage with, to identify what is creating that spike in referral traffic and engage with them further to make sure that we're optimizing it? And is the fact that social traffic is steady an opportunity in and of itself? What would it take is an important question to ask to move that social needle a little bit more. And I think when you start segmenting it and looking at social traffic by itself, you can test various options to start to figure out exactly how to move that social media needle in this example.
Absolutely. So your reporting, the reporting metrics which we saw and the measurement model, they both should be aligned. So everything what we have in acquisition, behavior, and outcome should be covered in this acquisition model. So as we can see, everything is covered. So that means, wow, we have done a good job. If we have missed out anything, it means that we need to do some more work and figure out other ways to complete this metric. Dan, would you like to add something?
No, I think we're probably just good to summarize our points, and then we'll open up the floor to questions. So I'll just take a stab at summarizing what we talked about. We've kind of come to the conclusion that since search is extremely important, and your website is now one of your main branded vehicles as a law firm, it's really becoming one of those first touch points. It's one of those first interactions where someone's going to get to know your firm. And even perhaps if they've heard of your name, really their first experience on a deeper level is going to be through that website. And because of that, understanding measurable interactions becomes increasingly important. And again, we've defined, the reason for this webinar is to talk about engagement, and we've started to define engagement as those measurable interactions. So once we accept that, we really need to figure out what we need to know. So that starts by setting organizational goals and understanding what we want the website to do and what we want users to see, think, and feel on our website itself and through other digital channels as well. And once you've started to define that, we've come to the conclusion that we need to understand then what is the actual data that we need to collect. So, and we bucketed that into, in this particular example, into brand-related data, such as unique visits to our website. We bucketed that into, again, behavior metrics, and we bucketed that into other types of outcomes. And you can use this information that we've got here in our slides to begin to formulate your own type of template and your own type of dashboard. And again, I think the thing that I would just add to this is that don't try to create an aggregated dashboard, a company-wide dashboard, because that's not going to be particularly useful to anyone. Work on creating those dashboards and segments within different sections of your website that relate to the different departments within your company. Anything else to add?
No, I think you've covered everything, and you're right about that. You need to have customized dashboards, which anytime you can, as a marketing manager, you cannot drill down in your analytics tool to see specific data. So you need a snapshot, as a customized dashboard to be created, which here you go, you click on one tab and you see everything.
Very good. Thank you. I think we've managed to keep this short, sweet, and hopefully informative. I believe that we're going to open up the webinar to questions now. Is that correct, Megan?
Yeah, we'll jump right in. We had a question about technology, and I think that it's an interesting one. Although before we jump into the questions, I wanted to mention you actually put together, for people who don't have this customized technology or a dashboard right now, you would put together a dashboard template that we put up on our website, on our blog yesterday, right? To talk about kind of setting people up to do this.
Yeah, we've created at eDynamic a dashboard that would allow you to go in and, as a starting point, be able to go in and use this Excel template to start entering your own data in, so that when you open it up and there's an explanation of how to use that dashboard, you can take that, look at some of the data, use some of the metrics that I've got predefined in there for you, and start creating your own dashboard and play around with it a little bit. It just provides kind of a good framework and a good starting point, and I think it would be of good value. So definitely go and Megan, where can they go and download that?
Go to thinking.edynamic.net, and I believe it's the first blog, but it might be the second one, or you can just search on edynamic.net, but you can find the dashboard there.
Very good.
Yeah, sounds good.
They can even filter by books on the right-hand side, and they can download that.
Perfect. So the next question is in technology. A lot of the focus lately, especially in law firms, has been what technology tools you need to sort of make this engagement tracking happen. Do you have any thoughts on that? Where you would start if you wanted to make your technology work better?
I think it's not about technology. Like we mentioned, I believe it's about your planning. How you, like we mentioned, the measurement plan and the matrix you need to measure. So be it any tool or any technology, if you have good brains in your organization who can actually create a solid measurement plan, any tool is good. What do you think about that, Dan?
Yeah, I think various tools have various capabilities that and there are different ways. I think there's an interesting thing about thinking about the tool. A lot of times we invest the bulk of our money in the tool that we want to use, and there's some great analytics tools out there. But really, we should probably spend about 10% on the tool and 90% on the actual analysts that are using it. So a little bit of a different perspective on that, but I think when we talk about data, we're really talking about insights, and the tool is not going to provide you insights. It's a vehicle to get the data out to you.
I agree with that. I also think that there's a possibility of just overlaying common practical sense when you look at your analysis and when you look at the data. I remember we had done some A/B testing before. It was actually an email, but I think it's similar to website conversion testing. And, the B got massively more clicks than version A. So, of course, we were like, we've made fire. It's excellent. So we drilled down a little bit more, and the reason that treatment B was getting so many more clicks was because everyone was clicking the opt-out button. So it's one of those
They were unsubscribing.
Yeah, they were unsubscribing. They hated it. And so that was like, but if we went with B, because objectively the numbers were better, if you didn't look any deeper, it's really using sort of, practical common sense. What do these numbers mean? And following through the path a couple different levels, because sometimes just one number in and of itself in a vacuum won't give you the right answer.
Very good.
And actually, that kind of couples into the next question that we had about aggregate data. You guys mentioned aggregate data a couple times. Are there examples of what kinds of aggregate data you would get? So, what are we talking about when we say aggregate or data in aggregate? Does that make sense?
So, aggregate data, what we mean is, let's say you have not filtered your data specific to your country. You're operating in the United States, and your data is all universe data. So you don't really know that it is from your target audience or not. So similarly, go ahead.
Beyond regional data, which I think is extremely important to start as a great place to start in terms of segmentation, right? Because different regions are going to have very different interactions. But even looking at something like total clicks to a website is aggregate data, and there's kind of a ask yourself the so what factor. I mean, so I have 6,000 clicks today. I'm not really sure what that means. When you start getting down to the different types of segmentation, where you can segment, I think we used practice areas as an example quite a bit, where we segment traffic to individual practice area sections of your website or to individual attorneys, we can start to see a little bit more patterns and that data becomes substantially more useful. If, for example, you've listed your attorneys alphabetically or something similar to that, and you have, an attorney with his last name starting with Z, and that individual attorney is not getting any traffic, there might be a clear indication as to why. And is that fair? I don't know if that attorney necessarily deserves to not get as much traffic because his or her last name starts with a Z alphabetically. So start thinking about that kind of thing in terms of how we're segmenting data. And when we talk to the sales team or when we talk to attorneys, they're going to have business insights for you and information that they want to know. Attorneys, as you all know, care a lot about their bios, and they care about how much time their bio is being viewed. So again, segmenting by attorney, segmenting by practice area, it's going to provide much better information than just saying, in aggregate, our website received X amount of clicks.
Right.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And then the final question, sorry, go ahead. No, go ahead.
If you talk in general terms, if you talk in general terms, as in aggregate data can be data from all channels. Let's say your marketing spending is more on social, and you see, but what you see in analytics, you don't know which traffic is coming from social. But if you go deep down, you realize that, okay, oh, social is not performing as well as we are spending on that. So, those are some insights you need to see.
Great, and then the final question, then I'm going to add one myself. The final question is about content. You guys mentioned content is sort of a critical piece of this. Are there examples of great B2B content that you've seen before that you would mimic or mirror?
Dan would like to take that?
Sure,
and if you guys don't have thoughts I could jump into.
No. I've got thoughts for days. So, I could probably name off a dozen B2B type websites that do this really well. I will talk about two. In the professional services space, McKinsey and some of the other management consulting firms have really started to do this well. So we really like to look at McKinsey, and I got to be honest, I'm not 100% fan of the design of the website, but they're doing a very, very good job in terms of overall content marketing, and they've done it probably, I know that as a management consulting firm, they're looking at that data in a very segmented and very appropriate way. Another really interesting player in the high-tech space, and this is just more for fun, but it's still B2B, and a former client of mine is Qualcomm. They're a major producer of chipsets, and they partner with folks like Samsung, but they're doing a great job of creating content for an otherwise kind of dry area within the B2B space. So I would definitely take a look at what they're doing as well as McKinsey.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I think there are a whole host of companies that. Yeah, I do. I mean, I think I agree with you that I like what McKinsey does. I think that there are also some, even agencies. I think that I'm forgetting the people who did the slide share on content management and content marketing. I think do a really good job. I think Digitaria actually does a good job, and then Contently, who is selling content to businesses. They do an interesting job. And then I want to think the other one, which is B2C, but I think it's an interesting example of a company that's really doing end-to-end engagement, is Coca-Cola. They're doing a liquid and linked campaign that they rolled out in 2014. It was really fascinating because it also involved a lot of their users. I think that sometimes looking at what really big brands are doing can tease out cool ideas, different videos, different ways that you can do things. That you can use on the B2B side, but I would also caution people a little bit. When you talk about B2B, I think it should start with the user. Everything that we ever did we do and have ever done from a content perspective starts with what people really want to read. And think about your audience. What do they do on a daily basis? What problems keep them up at night? And what can you do? What does your company do as a core competitive advantage that solves that for them? Because I think those are one of those things that then you're creating content that people really want to read and that will get traction. And I think that's one of the critical parts. It's not really about you. Often, especially at sort of law firms and consulting firms, because we've pushed and we're in very competitive businesses, we're used to talking about ourselves and kind of navel-gazing, so looking very inwardly to figure out who we are. And I think especially on the website and online content, the flip is everything you create from a content perspective is about somebody that's going to read this. So what do they care about? What are their challenges? What are they struggling with? And answer that. And that's where I would go with some content. Does that make sense?
Makes sense to me.
Yeah. And then the final question that I have for you guys that I like to answer in terms of a takeaway is, what's the one or two things that you think that people can start doing today to implement this in real life?
First things first, and this isn't even a data conversation, but this is a cross-channel, or I guess cross-departmental communications thing, is that talk to other departments and figure out what's important to them. Figure out, you guys, I'm sure you have a good idea. Again, we all know that the attorneys probably really want to go in and know more information about who and what and how much of their content is being consumed. What other departments? Does HR have particular needs? They've got recruitment requirements in terms of trying to get new lawyers that are just leaving school, and what does that funnel look like in terms of recruitment? What are possible recruits looking at within HR's section of the website. Talk to them about the things that they care about, and if they have any organizational mandates that have been set down. For example, you've got to get X number of new recruits. And those can help kind of drive those marketing decisions in terms of what to measure.
Great, that sounds wonderful. Well, with that note, this is the end of today's session. Thank you all for joining us so much and learning how to hold ourselves accountable for data and tracking and analytics in our law firms. The recording today will be available on our website within 3 business days. And we'll also share the webcast URL with everyone via email. In the meantime, if you want to reach out and contact us, you can do so at contact@edynamic.net for any questions that you might have or to follow up with Dan or Aditya or myself. And again, go to our thinking.edynamic.net page if you want to download that dashboard. It's a quick way to get you started. So thank you all once again, and have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.